Hey all, it's Rafi. And in this game, I'm playing a 15-minute game against my opponent, Vilash 1991, rated 1891. And the game started with d4, d5, knight c3, and it's my turn now. So I'm going to go with knight f6, which develops a piece and controls the center, of course. Um, if bishop f5, knight b5, knight a6 covers everything properly, so that shouldn't be a problem. So I'm going to start with bishop to f5, getting the bishop outside of the pawn chain, and then only developing the um, pawn to e6, and developing the dark square bishop maybe to d6 to trade off some pieces. And just as expected, he actually does play knight to b5. Cool. Cool. We're okay with that. Knight a6 develops a piece and stops the attack. And next move, I will be playing c6 to kick off the knight and gain some tempo, hopefully, on the knight. c6 kicks the knight back. Now e6. I don't know if I'm super worried about him chopping off this knight and opening up my rook. I think I'm okay with that. Probably. I don't think I want to waste any time moving that knight. So let's go ahead and keep moving, getting our pieces out. If he wants to give up that great bishop for that knight that doesn't have any squares, then let him do that. So here, I think I'm going to just take on d3 and then play bishop takes f4, probably. Do I want to do that? I think so. Now I'll castle and play c5 to challenge the center right away and make this f4 pawn a weakness. So now I'll take this one. I would like to play rook c8 here, which is the most natural move, but then queen takes a7 happens right away. I wonder if I can allow that, maybe even. Possibly rook c8, queen takes a7, queen a5. He castles away, that's the thing. I won't be getting a chance to sacrifice the rook on c3. Excuse me. Maybe b6, but then that makes c6 square really weak. Queen c7 is an option, but then knight b5 comes into the play. But then I have check. Or queen a5 right away, maybe. But then b4. But that does seriously weaken the c3 square, though. So maybe I'm okay with b4. Then I bring the queen back to c7 or something, maybe. Queen d6 or queen e7 are also options. I don't know. Do I want to trade off the queens? Maybe queen a5 followed by queen c5? Queen a5 I have to calculate b4, however. After that, queen c7, knight b6. Maybe then queen c5. He takes, I take. Knight c7, rook c8. I don't know. I feel like, principally speaking, though, I think, I don't know. Queen e5 probably is the best move here for me. So I'm just going to not give it too much thought. I'm just going to go ahead and play that. It's a move that develops the queen into a good square and prepares to bring the f rook to c8. Oh, quite aggressive. Here I may offer him a trade of queens, actually. I don't know. Do I want to offer him a trade of queens, or do I want to continue the attack and let him prove to him that this g4 is probably ultimately a mistake? If rook c8, g5, knight to h5. Yeah, I'm probably fine with that. But the thing is that he may just play h4 here, though. And that's something to note. He doesn't have to play g5 first. He can just play h4, then play... Oh, he castled behind this. That is super interesting. Absolutely interesting. Maybe now is a good time to trade off the queens and get my knight into the game. He's from Finland. Blitz rating is 1819. It's a pretty strong player. So queen c5, knight c5, g5, knight, f2, e4, f3. If he plays f3, then I'll take on c3, of course, so that's not going to work. If knight e4, then f3, then, knight back to d6 or something should be okay. I feel pretty good about my position. I think that I have a pretty even position with him, except he just has a slight structural weakness with the pawn on f4. And my goal is always to try to squeeze out a win out of simple, small, little advantages like that, such as this doubled pawn that he has on the f file. So hopefully it will amount to something for us in the endgame that's coming up soon. He's probably considering moves like rook to d1, which is a really good, solid developing move. Gets the rook into the action and lets me take on d4, then rook gets to a better square. He does play a move like rook to d1. I don't know, I may just continue developing, maybe rook c7. Because c2 is definitely a big time weakness here. As a matter of fact, I'm actually considering, now that I think about it, I may play rook takes c5 if he takes the queen. Yeah, that's what he played. That makes sense. So now rook to c7 is probably the way to go, I would imagine. Just planning to double up on the f file. I mean the c file, sorry. So we're tripled up on the c file. I do have to always be careful for back rank weaknesses, of course, in positions like this. Very important to remember that you cannot allow any sort of back rank checkmates by accident. Trying to think when would be a good time to trade off the queens and go into sort of like an endgame situation here. Let us improve our king maybe here. I don't like the idea of his g3 though. I don't like many things here. I don't like the fact that he can take and then play knight b5 here, hitting my rook and my pawn. I don't like the fact that my knight is so in the corner here either. He's playing a good game, that's for sure. There's definitely no doubt he's giving me a solid game here. I wonder if I want to play knight b8 and c6 here. I wonder. Knight b8, knight d7 is an idea as well. You know what? I kind of like this idea. Let's go ahead and reroute this knight. This is a really strange move, but it's got some purposes behind it. It takes away the d7 square for his knight to jump in and cause some sort of double attacks. It prepares for this move at some point by getting my rooks my rooks are kind of tangled up right now. Basically, that's my problem. So this way I can play a6 and take away the b5 square, and then bring the knight out this way and pressure this guy right here. Because I really want to maintain this doubled up rooks on the c file if at all possible, for as long as possible. And play the king to f8 so that there's no back rank weaknesses. So if he doesn't do anything here, my next move will be a6. Okay, so he draws his queen back. He doesn't want to trade anymore now. Okay. It's understandable. Well, my plan will continue to be the same thing. Maybe he wants to break with f5 now. I think that's his idea here. It's got to be it. So let us make f5 difficult. Let's play this one. Ooh, knight b5 looks real scary now. Oof. Knight b5 is a devastating move right now, actually. Shoot. I may be losing the exchange here, actually. Yep, knight d7 was way too rushed, because after knight b5, now he's hitting my rook. And if I take, he takes, hitting my other knight. Ooh, he missed it. He missed the opportunity. That was a golden moment. He could have capitalized off of. He missed it. He missed it. I will definitely not allow him second opportunities anymore. But f5 is still a threat kind of here. So that's what's bothering me now. Because after f5, I mean, he's really hitting the base of my pawn chain, and I don't have a good way to defend against that, unfortunately. Let's offer him queen c4, queen takes c4, rook b5. I'm taking on c2, so let's offer him another queen trade here. What I definitely don't want is that I don't want f5 to come and he has his queen on the board. That could actually be pretty dangerous for me, I think. Well, that's quite an interesting move. Knight to d4. Is now a good time to trade off the queens, maybe? And then play a6? She's really not liking this f5 idea at all. Let's go ahead and trade the queens first. Let's gain a tempo on the rook. Let's get the other knight involved in this as well. Oh, again, he can play knight b5, and it would be a really annoying move now. Oof. I should have done the other knight, because then c2 would have been hanging. Yep, he plays it finally. Man, I am not playing well this game, that's for sure. Knight d2. He takes, I take. Knight d2, rook d1, rook c, knight c4. He takes, I take. Maybe this is a way to try to save some material here. I don't know. I only have 3 minutes. I gotta play fast. Got to play very fast. So the idea here was that, if I just move my rook, he just takes on a 7, and I don't see any good way to get my pawn back, and his knights are getting super active. So instead of moving my rook, I counterattack his rook. And if he plays rook d1, I play rook knight to c4. And if he takes, then I take the rook and I'm hitting his other rook as well. So after, and if he doesn't do that, if he just takes my rook now, I'll take his and I'm attacking this rook again. So the whole idea of this is that no matter where he moves the two rooks, I'm always taking one rook and attacking the next one. So he doesn't have time to play in between moves like knight e6 to grab extra pawns. So if rook d1, knight c4, if rook c, over here, then I guess then I can move my rook, or I can even play knight here probably to hit the rook again. Well, I guess if I move the rook knight, that wouldn't. No, that would work. That would work because his rook is my knight is in the way of the rook, so he can't take on c7. He can take with the knight. I take here. He takes. Man, there's a lot going on here. This is complicated no matter how I calculate this. There's a lot of possibilities in this position here. I'm expecting him to play rook d1 here, actually. I don't think he's going to go directly into knight c7 here. It's all sorts of interesting things here. Ooh, that is interesting. If I take the rook now. So he just took a pawn. I just took. Oh, now he's lost. Definitely lost. Because now I'm taking his other rook. He's definitely lost now. Without a shadow of the doubt, I'm up a rook. He did not calculate that properly. Tough way to lose a game. Tough way to lose a game. Yep, he resigned. That was a major blunder there. Lucky break for us because we were definitely worse. No doubt that after knight b5, I was in trouble. I will be right back. Okay, so 2 blunders, 2 inaccuracies. So that's pretty bad, actually. 2 blunders is really bad. Anyway, let's look at the game and see where we could have improved our play. Okay, so d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6, bishop f4. This is all pretty standard. We're both getting our pieces out, controlling the center. We're following the principle of least active piece, the principle of maximum activity by moving our pieces to the squares where they have the maximum activity and starting, you know, by moving our pieces that are the least active first. So obviously the bishops are more active than the knights in the beginning because from their home square, the bishop guards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares, whereas this knight from here would have guarded only 2. Now it can guard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's why we typically move the knights before the bishops in the beginning of the chess game. All right, so then I've got my bishop out of the pawn chain before playing the move e6. Knight to b5. He attacks the weak point on c7 right away. And we play knight to a6, which is the only move that protects the c7 pawn. And a3, which I don't understand why. Maybe he played a3. I guess to take away the b4 square from my knight, I would imagine. Then I just played c6, which just kicks the knight back. And then I played e6, which prepares to develop our dark square bishop on d6 to challenge his one on f4. So e3, getting his light square bishop open, and I quickly calculated that letting him take this bishop probably is okay because he's giving up an active bishop for a knight, and yeah, I would get these doubled pawns here, which is definitely not ideal, but I would get the open b file to attack down. But I don't know, the computer doesn't like it so much. And it's actually suggesting knight b8. Interesting. I'm just following a sort of like a structure where I'm just playing like a semi-Slav structure almost with the bishop outside of the pawn chain, which wouldn't be bad, in fact. But I kind of ignored that, so I just played bishop d6. It's fine also. Bishop d3. So I traded the bishops, and I took on f4, and then I castled, got my king to safety, develops a knight, and I needed to now undermine the center quickly before he can play a move like b4 to really solidify my pawn here. So I quickly played c5 right away, challenging the d4 pawn. He got his knight to the central square on e5. Went ahead and traded off the central pawn. And then here I played, what did I do? Oh yeah, here I played queen a5. Although knight b8 is interesting. I should have considered this move actually. But I didn't give it too much thought. Did not give it too much thought. And instead, what I did is I played queen to a5, developing my queen. Yeah, so here I did consider this b4, but I thought it just kind of weakens the c3 square. So he actually played this interesting move g4, and I didn't first understand. I mean, I thought he was just going to roll me on the king side by playing h4 and g5 like that. But after g4, I was preparing for him to play h4, but so I played rook c8 to try to get some play on the queen side while he does that. He surprised me by castling here. Just surprising. And now he just has a weakness on g4. His pawn is just advanced, and I don't know. Although I couldn't really take much advantage of it the whole game, I just felt like it was kind of a weakness. So here I played queen to c5, trying to force a queen trade, which apparently wasn't the best idea. I think I agree with the computer that knight b8 and knight c7 should have been considered a while back. He doesn't trade, and I just double up my rooks. And h3. So here I was kind of worried about f5, so that's why I was getting kind of worried at some point here. So finally, I did play knight to b8. Because I kept realizing that the knight really doesn't have any good squares anywhere on the a6, so it needed to go back. Queen d3. Knight b to d7. Here I was expecting knight to b5. So what happens after knight b5 here? Computer likes this move. Oh, so attacks the rook. You take this, then you move the rook. Interesting. That's an interesting line. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that there was some way out, although I'm not sure if I would have found it. I'm sure I probably would have. Had he played knight b5, I would have tried to find my resources here to try to save, my rook. But yeah. that didn't happen. So anyway, he instead returned his knight back to that square on f3. And then I played queen c4, which apparently is a big mistake. Why is this such a mistake? Maybe because it gives all my advantage away. I think that's what it is. If queen c4, then oh yeah, he starts this f5 stuff, which is not good at all. I would have probably done something like this, and maybe, I don't know, push the pawn or something like that. But yeah, anyway, this definitely isn't the right way to play. I agree with the computer here, of course, that should have maybe kept the pressure on the queen side. I do understand. I think I guess understand why queen b6 is suggested here. It keeps attacking on the queen side and not giving him a chance to play this f5 idea. Because after queen takes b2, I'm hitting the knight on c3 as well. So I do understand why I should have played that. Queen c4 instead. Knight here. Traded queens. Took with the rook. And what did I do? I played knight to c5 to get a tempo on the rook. He moved the rook. Then I moved the other knight in. So then here he played knight c to b5. And here I thought I was being very clever by playing knight d2, but apparently it's a mistake, and it wants me to play rook d7. So what if he just takes this? I guess I just played for counterplay here and activity? I don't know. Now knight d2. Now here. And now I win that. Oh, okay, I see. Now I see. Okay. Gotcha. So instead, I played rook d2. So that is bad. Why? So I take here. He takes this. I take that. Ah, the other knight pops in now with a tremendous attack. Attack his rook. Takes this. Now I'm down a pawn for no good reason. I see. That makes sense. Okay, gotcha. So I didn't calculate all this in the game, but it makes sense. But that's quite a bit you have to see in order to figure out that it's not quite a bit, but it's still tricky calculations that have to be made. So he takes that instead, and I think that was not the best solution. Now he should have definitely taken my knight. When he took my rook, I already knew that, because here, he's taking a pawn, I'm taking a rook, so he's got to. He's pretty much already in a lot of trouble here. He's on exchange at the very least. So already, he needed to take my rook earlier. So after this move, he's just completely down a piece. Maybe he was hoping that I would take the knight, and then he would take back that my knight, and maybe that that would definitely be in his favor, because then I would have 6 pawns to his 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pawns. But instead, I have in between move, which is knight takes e3, which is the whole idea of my calculation when I was looking at knight d2. So anyway, he just fell apart after that. Of course, it's down a whole rook. It was over. So yeah, pretty cool game. Definitely played very, very sloppily, and but we got some lucky breaks and we capitalized off of them. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the game as well, and I'll catch you guys in my next video.